Today we're going to be looking at Overtone in the color Extreme Blue. These little containers are so cute. I'm so glad they sell these. So I have my swatches labeled 1 through 12, but that is not synonymous with hair levels. I do pictures and clips near the end of the video, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch. They are human hair swatches, but the only one that is virgin hair is the number 4 black swatch. The rest have been chemically colored or bleached at some point in their existence. 1 is pink. I was kind of wanting to see if it would turn purple. 2 is gray. 3 is a natural red. 4 is black. And then 4 to 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde. And then 12 is like a toned version of number 11. So I'll take the dye directly out of the container and I'll apply it to the top of each swatch. Some people do like to dilute their dyes, so I will do a diluted version at the bottom of each swatch. Please keep in mind everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take color differently. Also, different screens and monitors can change how a color looks, so please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly turn out for you and your hair. So for the diluted version, we're gonna do a 1 to 4 ratio. So that's gonna be 1 part of the color to 4 parts of diluter. And if you're wondering what diluter is, my simple answer that I like to give is that it's something that kind of lightens the color of your semi-permanent dye. Each brand usually sells a diluter you can use within the brand, but I like to just use a plain white conditioner for diluting. I'm gonna let these sit for about 3 hours so they can really absorb the color. I will rinse them out, and when they're dry, I will meet you back here and we'll do some comparisons. So the way that Overtone works is they have a whole system for hair. They have shampoos, conditioners, and then the hair mask, which is what I used to dye the hair. And then the shampoo and conditioners are also colored, but they're not as pigmented and they're meant to help maintain the color. So I just treated this like a regular hair dye. This is the Extreme Blue, so it's the darkest blue without it being for brown hair. So they do make one for brown hair. This is not it. That being said, it does seem to color over like medium brown, lightish brown hair. And I do notice a difference on the actual darker browns as well, but I won't say that it really looks blue. It just kind of makes the undertone of the brown a lot more cool toned. So it just looks like a very, very cool toned brown now. And I am curious if the blue for brown hair actually does make it look blue, because I usually do find that most blues over brown hair don't really look blue. They'll either look like this coolish tone brown or even kind of a greenish brown. But back to this particular color. Now, even though it did dye on number 7, it kind of has that like greenish blue quality I was talking about a minute ago. I feel like the more true blue tones don't come through until you have the lightness of number 8, so like a dark blonde maybe. And then from there, it kind of depends on the desired result, I guess. On number 11, and 12, it has a very jewel tone quality. It's very saturated and kind of like bright, even though it's a darker blue. But on the blonder swatches, it almost has a slightly more muted look and it's not as bright looking. I feel like that kind of even pulls true on the diluted sections. 10's not bad either, but it just looks a little more muted, softer on the darker swatches. So number 1 was pink. The direct dye definitely covered all of the pink. It's not quite as soft looking as maybe like 9 or 10, but it's not quite as saturated looking as number 11 either. It's kind of in between. It might be a little bit more purpley looking in comparison to these, but realistically it's still very blue. There's not really any purple. So the undertones changed just a tiny bit, but really not that much. I feel like you see a slight more purple bit on the diluted section, especially right here. Assuming the ends are probably a lot more porous, they absorbed a lot more blue, but as you go up the shaft, it gets a little less porous because it's probably less damaged. So 2 is gray, that definitely covered. Again, it's not quite as saturated looking as number 11's. It does look a little bit more soft on the gray tones, but overall that would be like the main difference I see. 3 looks actually very green on top where it did take. I do see a difference on the bottom as well, but it's almost like brown looking. It almost looks like it's the same as number 6. And then, like I said, the direct dye portion actually turned quite green. For being black, it usually doesn't take any color, and again, it didn't take any color. And then before I get into the comparisons, I also want to say that if you have virgin hair, especially darker virgin hair, I started to put a little warning in my videos that even if a color does take on your hair, there is a chance that it will wash right out because virgin hair does have a hard time holding on to semi-permanent pigment. So always do a strand test. Okay, so for our comparisons, I don't actually really have any blues that are exactly the same. So I chose ones that were most similar in undertone. I do have a handful of cool tone blues, but some of them were just a little bit too smoky looking or just a little too cool toned. But like I said, none of them are exact matches. So the first one is going to be the least similar one, and it's Good Dye Young in the color Blue Ruin. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. Okay, so the Good Dye Young one is extremely pigmented. You can tell even just how nicely covered the diluted section is. I don't remember how much I lightened it, but I definitely did lighten it, and it still looks very, I don't know, cohesive. I don't know the right word. Maybe intentional on the diluted section. Now, the direct dye portion is almost more cool toned looking. It almost reminds me of the ink from a ballpoint pen, but then as you dilute it, you can see a lot more of the slightly more greenish tones coming through. It's not green at all, but with how cool tone it looks to me anyways on top, I was expecting this to look slightly more purpley, but it actually was a little less purpley, a little more green, which is why I thought the undertones in this weren't too far off, even though they're not really all that similar either. But I will say if you need a very pigmented blue dye, this could be an option, the Good Dye Young, because even on the number 9, both the top and the diluted section just look great. I think I personally like the Overtone a little bit better on slightly lighter hair, whereas the Good Dye Young can do slightly darker hair as well. So my other comparison is going to be Lunar Tides in the color Blue Velvet. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. So you can see these ones are a little bit more similar. So if you're familiar with Lunar Tides line, I almost feel like the extreme blue might be how Blue Velvet mixed with Smoky Navy would look, because I was very close to comparing this to Smoky Navy because it was slightly less greenish looking, but then it wasn't as saturated as I wanted it to look, and I was just like struggling which one to pick. I do feel like the Blue Velvet is a little bit more similar, which is why I ultimately went with Blue Velvet. Blue Velvet is a little bit darker, but they both kind of have that like jewel tone look to them on the direct dye. But honestly, the extreme blue looks even more like a pop of color. I don't know why. I need to like go on thesaurus.com and look up a bunch of words before I make my videos. But it does seem like the pigmentation is about the same, especially looking at number 9. The direct eyes both covered really well, and then the ends are okay. If you wanted to dilute either of these, I would recommend having lighter hair. So essentially the Overtone Extreme Blue is a really nice mixture of a cool toned blue that on blonde hair looks relatively saturated, but it's not as saturated as maybe something like the Good Die Young, and it is white unique. I have not found anything in my collection that looks similar so far, but if of course I do find any, I will compare them in future videos. Alright, so now I'd like to get into our before and after clips. Those, as well as anything after that point in the video, will all be done in natural lighting. I hope this video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do brands I do not test on animals. Thank you so much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.